Welcome. My name is Anthony LeTourneau. I'm the illustrator for Chip Theory Games, and welcome to our How to Draw series. In this series, we're going to be covering three different characters. We're going to do the Owlbear, we're going to do Nightshade from Undertow, and we're going to do the Gearlock Child. Today, we're going to do Owlbear first. Okay guys, let's begin. We're going to start this project drawing the Owlbear in Photoshop. The version I use is Photoshop 2018. So we're going to start with by creating a file. So let's go to New. And I want to create a 12 by 9 horizontal view, 300 DPI. I'm going to make the background kind of a middle gray. I like to work on a neutral gray. The white is just a little too stark. So let's create. Okay, if you look over here is the layers palette, and we have our background set to gray and it's locked. I'm going to create a new file. And let's start in, here's my brushes over on the left side, and I'm going to work kind of in a pencil. Just kind of it's a grainy type of pencil. You can find a lot of different brushes online. I encourage you to kind of experiment with your different brushes. I'll just show you my settings on that brush. So where's that brush settings? My settings on that brush is I kind of take the texture down and change the shape dynamics so it has a taper on both ends. It just kind of makes a nice stroke. Let's start this first round. When I do most concept drawings is they happen in subsequent layers. So the first is more of a construction layer. Then we will knock back the opacity and begin to build on top of the construction layer. So the construction layer, let's kind of do in a we can do it in let's do it in a red. So I'm going to pick a middle value red. And let's land it kind of here in the middle. Enlarge this just slightly. There we go. And I'm going to do a sphere. A sphere is kind of a good beginner point, and I'm working pretty light. Now we can always knock the opacity back. Pay attention, I have the opacity of my brush itself set at 65%. So it's not coming down super dark. And I want the sphere to just kind of symbolize in the middle of this space where the skull is going to be. And this Owlbear, we're going to work in a 3/4 perspective. So I'm going to set up my center line as like a line around a tennis ball. So it kind of gives you an idea of the center of the face, and you can work right and left symmetrically and keep things in tune that way. Okay. Owlbear. We need to set the line for his eyes, where his eyes will ride on his skull. And that'll be kind of like the marker where we can begin to build out from that point. So again, thinking that this skull is kind of like wrapping around, and his head is going to be turned up a little bit in our roaring action. So let's kind of like just set a light line kind of going in this direction. All right. Okay, so right from there, right at that intersecting point, so we have an arc here and an arc here and our sphere. At that intersecting point, I want to draw a sphere about so big. And that is actually going to be his nose. So it's going to be a foreshortened perspective. His nose is turning upward in this direction, his muzzle. And then as we're thinking of that, let's kind of think of his muzzle, his mouth, the front of his nose is going to be going up in this direction. So I want to draw two lines. Now I'm not following the curve of this. I'm kind of going to make more of a box, kind of going in that direction. I might bring this out a little bit. Let's erase this. I might bring this one out just slightly, kind of give it a little more width. Okay. All right. And so his nose is going to kind of bulb off the top of that muzzle. All right. And then this nose will have kind of a side to it. So let's just kind of give it a little back shadow, a little side plane, I should say. And with the center line being kind of right here, we're going to add a few nostrils. Okay. Now we have this line to kind of set the front facing plane of the muzzle, and I want to at the same time kind of give the bottom where the mouth is going to open out. Notice how light these lines are. I want to keep them really, really light because there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in here. We're going to drop some teeth in here. We're going to put a beak on here. So I want to not make any of these lines super heavy and dark. That will just get in the way. So as I'm thinking of that, let's kind of let's do this. Let's do the teeth. That'll help. So we're going to hang a tooth line that kind of like rides right in that same area. So we have the bottom front of the lip, and then the teeth. And then we'll do a big canine hanging off this side. And coming in over here, right at the edge of where that side of the front of that muzzle is, we're going to hang another tooth. And they're kind of hooked in that direction. Now, most of this here we're going to come back and we're going to erase some of this because this is where the front beak is going to be. But picture kind of 4 teeth here across the middle, and you can draw those in really lightly. Much of that is going to be erased. Okay. Now I'm going to work on his bottom lip, the bottom part of that beak. And so if you follow the center line around, I want to kind of picture the mouth as being a great big oval opening. So down here, right at the bottom of the sphere is where I want to draw another oval. And I'm kind of trying to keep that in line with that center line. And I'm going to do this somewhat vertical. Maybe a little pitch to it. And then we're going to draw that back all the way up and connect to this part of his mouth in that manner. So what we're trying to do is trying to give the impression that his mouth is wide open and that beak is hanging open here at the bottom, and that's going to house some teeth. So let's kind of make an S curve. It kind of follows that. And then we're going to follow the inside of this, and we're going to do the same type of S curve right here. Okay. So tightening some of this stuff up. Okay, he has a bottom row of teeth, and they're going to follow right along this this arc of that skull sphere. So let's just kind of draw a horizontal line. It's matching the angle of this line. You want them to kind of all the perspective angles to stay consistent. Now let's do another canine on the bottom here, another canine kind of going up in the other direction, and this is where some of those teeth will be. Don't worry about it getting really kind of messy here in these early stages. Again, in Photoshop, the advantage I have, I'm going to go up over here and just show you, I'll knock all this down to a real light layer where I can barely see through, and then I can begin to add some more details, but in a very purposeful, careful way. So this is just giving me some landmarks that I can begin to noodle on and develop some real detail after. I want to hang his tongue in here, so we're just going to arc back and in both directions. And then maybe a few, thinking that this jaw is open, we're going to actually hang some teeth back there, and they're just going to be hinted in some kind of random way there with some boxes. Okay, this is not a fleshy jaw. This is actually a hard beak, so we have to kind of give an edge to the beak and then a bottom hook part to the beak, because remember, he's an owlbear. And this is where now I want to maybe give the actual top beak in here. So let's do some erasing right here in the middle, right along the center line. And if it helps you keep that center line in there, I can kind of visualize where that's at. I might even come back here now just to restate that. That's the center line. Now I want that hooky part of that top beak to kind of meet right at that center line, and I'm going to go in both directions. And let's kind of make a heart shape here, kind of there. And it's going to kind of come up here. And then this edge, I want to follow the same contour line as that center line, and that will just kind of meet up here at the nose. Okay. Now, from here, let's get the eyes in, and so the rest of the framework of the skull, and then we can begin to add some details. So if the nose is kind of meeting up here, the eyes kind of ride that same line that we put in right along here. There's one on this side, and it's kind of tucked in tight to his nose, right in the corner. And he's angry, so let's kind of give a downward stroke to that brow line and tuck that eye in there. Now this other one that's going to be over here, we need to kind of set its space. So this is just, remember, this is the front plane of this nose. There's also going to be a side plane. We're going to see a little bit of the side of that nose. So let's create about a half the nose width's distance over here. And that's where the side of that muzzle is going to be. And let's just put some indication lines there, kind of wrap that around. Now this one will actually have some details that we'll add a little bit later, but it'll be kind of like scrunched up as they kind of growl. And if you notice your dog or your cat, how there's some character lines that kind of state some aggression there, but we'll work that out. So once we have the side plane of this muzzle established, then we know that we can land the eye on the same horizontal line right in this corner. I don't want it really tight in here. I want it just a little space. So we're going to do another circle, another sphere with some of those brow emotion. And this is an important line. This line here, so we have the eye line that's going in this direction. This line here, we can go ahead and symbolize that with an arc, kind of following all the way across, is actually going to be where we're going to do his ears. That's the kind of the brow anger lines. We can kind of even make it more aggressive and maybe S-curve it a little. Okay. And then some musculature, some anatomical notes is there's a little bit of some bone that's kind of underneath here that just gets stretched and exposed a little bit as he opens and stretches that skin. So I like to kind of just put that in there. It adds a little bit more of that aggression look. Okay. And then down here, there's a lower jaw. So we have the beak part, but I want to symbolize both the owl and the bear. So we're gonna follow this side plane all the way down to where a bottom jaw would be, and we'll just kind of round that out a little bit. And when we come back, we'll add some hair. Okay. It might help if I color this in, kind of separate a little bit of that. Oh, don't forget our teeth. I want to separate that. And actually all of this. Let me widen my brush a little, and we'll kind of darken all this in here, just so we can see it a little better when we knock the opacity back. Okay. Okay, following now this sphere's contour, this is going to be the width of the head. So thinking bear, but at the same time thinking owl, we're going to add some broken stroke lines, some hair lines. We don't have to get too detailed here. This is all going to really be amped up on our second drawing. But I'm following the contour, and what I'm doing is I'm thinking just breaking these lines, and I'm not being consistent. I'm kind of going in different directions, back and forth with my hand, and it just gives an indication that there's hair being grown there. And then I'm going to do the same thing around here. It's kind of like the thick neck. And as I work up here, we need to probably do those ears. So owls have these. Let me see if I can pull that drawing over so you can kind of see. I'm sorry, pull that photo over of an owl's ear. So owls have these like these tufty ears, and there's like feathers hanging, but yet they're kind of like also like cat ears or bear ears, if you will. So they have these feathery, but it's kind of a bigger arcing triangle, a sphere with pointy edges on the tips. So we're going to try to do that here. We're going to hang an owl ear here and an owl ear here. So let me close that. All right. So on this side, we want to be able to follow this line all the way up. And we're going to do an ear. Now, a bear's ear would be something more like this, you know. But this is an owl, so we're going to kind of run a sphere. I'm sorry, an oval, but it's got like a point to it, more like that. And if you remember that photo, we had these random feathers that kind of fly off the edges. I think both on the top and the bottom, more so on the bottom. So we do about a half a dozen here down here. Okay, so a little more challenge on this other side as you come over on this other side, because it's away from us as the viewer, but at the same time it's also tipping in the other direction. So we want to make sure that we can communicate that it's back in space. That it's not on the same plane really as this one. It's not as forward, I should say. It is on the same plane. So this one's going to go back more in this direction here. Something like that. If it helps you, you can kind of land it just off the center of that nose area, and that might help you. You know, a lot of drawing, that's really what it is. It's a relative size. You're looking at something and you're trying to land it off other landmarks. For me, that's really my go-to way of drawing. There's a lot of different tools people employ, but I try to use that measurement where I'm kind of basing things, cueing things off other things. Okay. Now, because he's angry, bears have a certain width to their skull, but at the same time, he's also an owl. So we're going to try to communicate both of those in one stroke, and that's this kind of arc, this arc that kind of comes down here, and it kind of comes down here, and it's going to meet on the center line. And that kind of gives you that owl head and bear skull all in kind of one stroke. All right. I'm liking that. We'll come back here with some strokes. All right. Now, let's indicate his bearishness by putting a big hump kind of right back in this area. That's the signature grizzly bear hump, kind of the big marker that tells you a brown bear, a grizzly bear is distinctly different from a black bear. And it's this big muscular hump. That's part of their anatomy. So the center line is going to stay consistent. So let's keep that center line kind of coming through there, visually picturing that. And then we will indicate some hair markers and some shoulders kind of being dropped down here on this side. Let's do this foreleg kind of dropping down here too, and picturing kind of a thick, heavy neck coming down here. This is all kind of foreshortened. Okay, so we get kind of the first drawing done there. I'll kind of move it so you can kind of see it a little bit. I'm pretty happy with that. There might be some slight changes I might make as we go into our second drawing. We'll get to this, but owls have this this kind of like eye patches on each side, and we will get to those when we get to our final render. All right, so let's knock the opacity back on this. We're going to knock that back to, let's say, about 18%. I don't need to see it in detail. I just need to get my landmarks. And basically what we're going to do at this point is tracing. You're tracing your own drawing, but you're using landmarks to kind of navigate those trace lines. And so now I've set up my second layer on top of my first layer. I'm going to use a kind of almost all the way down here on my color guide and bend towards the darks. I don't want to go all the way over here, but I also don't want to have any red tones in it as well. And I might bring my brush down a little bit. Okay, now thinking of the details working systematically from what I had before. I want to be conscious of the bear's nose, some of the details in that. So let's address that. Starting with the center nostrils. We don't have to now worry so much about things like center lines, because those are already there. So we'll kind of work on some of these here. Side planes, some details, and I'm using kind of a sketchy line even on this stage. I don't want to bear down. I want kind of some liveliness to my strokes. I don't want it to be like dead and hard inked, although that could be something that if you wanted to do that, you could do that. I want to kind of give it a sketchiness. So there's a center nose detail that's there, and then there's these wings on bear noses that kind of come out from the nostrils, and it just kind of follows this side here. Okay. So let's draw that. Now this is a beak here, so it's going to be shiny. Let's do our light coming from this direction here. I'll put that up there just to remind me that my light's coming from that direction. So there might be this side here will be a little bit darker because it's not catching light, whereas this side might be a little bit lighter over here because it is catching the light. So that's going to be also true for this beak. It's going to catch some light there, and this side might be a little bit darker. So I'm going to just do that. I'm going to kind of use some hatch marks indicating, it's a beak. So there's a little bit of some texture to it, but it's pretty smooth. And then kind of bringing it down. Now, there's always on these things, there would be like a dark shadow, core shadow, and then some reflected light. I should say form shadow, not core shadow. All right. And then we're going to hang this muzzle, this front plane of this muzzle here, we're going to hang it around that tooth. Remember, it's kind of fleshy there. I want to kind of indicate that there's fur there. And then this canine tooth. You can make it sharp. I'm going to make mine a little little less sharp at the tip. And then I want to indicate my teeth. You can kind of do those on that line, but sometimes it helps to kind of break up that line a little bit, and land one higher, one lower. But I'm only going to indicate like 4 or 5 across there in the middle. I think bears have 6 of them, actual grizzly bears, but this is our invention, so we get to make as many or as little as we want. This other canine tooth. And then, of course, this comes back in anatomy, so there's a couple teeth maybe snuck in there behind that tooth. Let's kind of raise this lip up a little and give them a little bit more gum exposure, at the same time giving some more aggression. A little bit. And following this line, now isn't it nice to have those ghosted lines in there? Kind of shows you what to follow, and you don't have to worry so much. We're going to come down here, and let's pay a little tighter attention down here that this is a beak. So I want to taper and add some width to that top edge. So it's kind of, and then on the inside line, and then it beaks out. I want to kind of point it, and we're going to picture it the same thing on this side here. You don't get to see as much of that edge, and then it kind of has a swoop down there on the bottom to communicate hard-edged beakiness. Okay, teeth. Following, so these teeth lines are going here. We want to make sure we're staying on that same plane, and let's do a couple of these little ones in the bottom first before we do the larger canines on the sides. And this one might sneak up there like that. Not a lot of bird beaks with teeth, so you don't have a lot of references to follow there. Then we have a couple teeth that are kind of snuck in back here, some of those molars back underneath that tongue. And then the tongue goes back, and this will all be progressively dark. So let's go ahead and add a center line and tuck the back corner in here. And I'm going to go ahead and do exactly what I said, is this is going to be really dark, and it's going to actually get progressively dark as it goes back. And so that might involve changing your opacity on your brush. So I'm going to crank that up just a little bit so I can kind of achieve that darkness without hitting it so many different ways, so many different times. Okay, I'm going to make that brush a little bigger, fill in this area a little quicker. I'll bring it back down. And I want that tooth to stand out, so I'm going to make this hatched a little bit more, and then this area down here a little more. Okay. This is just a sketch, so we're not going to really overcrank the details and work on the values as much as if it was a finished drawing. But so now, as we're working on this overall bear structure on the side of his muzzle, let's pay attention that this is kind of fur sitting on top of muscles, which is sitting on top of bone. So we don't want to be super hard with our lines. We're going to kind of break some of these up, and then indicate that muzzle kind of comes into the top of that eye line. And there's a top plane here. We don't really get to see it because of the angle, but there really is kind of a flat plane in there, and we'll just indicate some of those wrinkles in his muzzle that way. Now I don't want to again follow this line hard. I'm just going to use a broken up line and kind of indicate that this is all kind of like fur in here, and then maybe come back down in here and restate this chin with some fur on that. I'm making that a little darker down there so you can kind of see that it's a beak. There. Okay. Well, let's get up here and address these eyes. Dark corner, that is the brow. It's carrying, it's dropping its shadow, and then the eye itself, we can add a little bit of an almond shape to it. Kind of brings in a little more devilish look, and adding some darker values around it kind of helps set that out. Following this contour up and picturing it's doing the same thing on the other side. There. Don't forget we have these bone kind of marks that I think helps kind of set up a cheekbone structure. And again, we're not doing dark lines. We're doing these like light fur hatches, just kind of like show that there's some structure underneath there. I might darken up this side here so we can kind of see that a little better. Okay, this outside edge. Let's work on some fur. I have some cool fur brushes I could use if we're actually doing a full rendering, but for the sake of time, we're just going to indicate with some hatches going in different directions like we did before. And I want kind of a couple different layers here. I don't want just one outside layer. The fur is layered, and he's kind of chubby, and so we want to kind of like show some layering, some building up of these fur feathers. There's probably going to be a combination in here. We'll add them in a different direction, keeping in mind that there's some muscles underneath there as well. All right, let's catch this other side just so we work symmetrically. And don't forget that, things got to kind of match on each side as we're working our way down his anatomy. Build into this neckline. I want to give a little, kind of go off my pencil drawing a little bit, my construction lines a little bit, and just bring it down here. Okay, I did mention that owls have these eye patches. Let me see if I can pull up that owl reference I had before. It's helpful to see that. Where is that owl reference? Here it is. Kind of see it. They've got this this owl patch, this eye patch. I'm sorry. It's kind of fur feathery, and of course there's those ears. So we're gonna tackle these eye patches here. So they kind of wrap around the eyes. It's fur, but yet it's feathers. So let's kind of put one on here and coming down to that muzzle line. And we'll do the same thing over on this side. Wrapping it around. Remember what that reference did? It kind of did this kind of thick, dark hatching lines. And it's amazing how quick that helps tell your viewer owl. These big patches under there. Of course, we have the beak and the ears, but this to me helps a lot communicate owl. Okay, let's build out these ears now. I think it's helpful to kind of make sure you do your dark lines underneath real dark, again keeping that feathery stroke, but that kind of like helps pull the eye up and around. So let's do that. Following this, there's a few feathery hairs. I don't know what they are, feathers or hairs, but maybe a little of both. And I'm just using a random stroke. I'm not worrying too much about a lot of details. I'm just letting them all kind of blend together. Hatches and crisscrosses, and just kind of noodling across with my hand all the way up to the tip, and then we'll add some of those broken lines here on the back, following this ear, and then maybe even a few kind of random ones there off the tips. Okay, the top of, we can see our center line in here, and so the top of the head, we want to kind of follow that, and each side, so it kind of makes that bump. And let's go ahead and add some eyebrows. There will be a separate line above here and a separate line above here. Kind of pulls all this down. And then we can add more feathers. So let's start here in the middle and do some overlapping arcs. Just kind of indicate that we have feathers here. And they can be broken up. You don't have to be, super obsessive about it. We're just kind of overlapping, but want to indicate it's almost a scaling pattern, like you would maybe try to tackle some fish scales or something like that. But they're feathers. That's what we're trying to communicate quickly. Now, if we wanted to really pay attention, I do have some additional brushes that would kind of symbolize feathers, but again, this is for the sake of time. We're going to stay there with that. Okay, we're almost done with it. Let's add some fur detail down here, adding some, this has got the least amount of light underneath this chin. So let's darken some of this area up. Bringing it all the way over into this area. Following it down here. And actually this front shoulder, we can drop the value down on this whole front shoulder. We'll let that just kind of fade off down there. Following these fur lines, let's get those all the way in around. Okay, almost done. I want to kind of add a few more kind of fur kind of following in this direction, keeping the berryness of him. Maybe another layer of fur kind of thrown through here, through the thicker part of his neck. And let's get up here and address that front shoulder, or that back hump. Again, keeping the fur. There's the center line. And the fur is going to go random. Let's go right over that arrow. Well, we're kind of reaching the end here. We could spend a lot of time kind of working through the fur, and I encourage you, if you have time, go ahead and do that. It's kind of fun. It's cathartic a little bit to sit and work on some of these details. But if you do that, pay attention to your light source coming from this angle. Your shadows are going to be down in this area. The light is going to hit these top edges. Get some details on the mouth. I mean, I literally could spend hours working on this. Some values in here. But you can kind of see that he's looking more of an amalgamation, a combination of owl and bear. We see this character in the Too Many Bones universe. I can't make any promises that he's going to appear in any other type of chip theory game universes, but this has been kind of a popular one. And I want to thank you for joining us today. We have 2 more in this series. I hope you can make it. We'll be drawing the Gearlock Child as well as Nightshade as a pup. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the con, and thank you for joining us.